All right, so we've come a long way with our animation so far. We already have 5 versions, but let's duplicate it and make it even better. We're gonna talk about our next principle of animation, which is overlap. And we can use this with what we already have. So overlap is an animation principle that's basic idea is nothing should be moving all at once. This box that we've animated so far is totally rigid. It's holding its shape. All of it is moving at the exact same time. So what we're gonna do is introduce a little bit of distortion so that parts of the box aren't moving at the same time as other parts of the box. And that's gonna add a lot of personality to the way that this box looks. We're gonna do this with another effect called Bend It. So I'm again going to use my keyboard shortcut for FX Console and type in Bend It, and there we go, CC Bend It. I'll press Enter to apply it. And I need to set this up a little bit. The reason why this composition, this pre-comp has so much empty space is because this effect can actually crop the contents of it. So I'm just going to grab this top control right here, which is, if I scroll all the way down, the end value of the bend, and I'm just gonna click and drag while holding Shift and move it to the top of the composition. And then I'm gonna zoom in nice and close and move this end to the bottom, which should be 350. So I'm just gonna type in 350 on the Y, and now that's centered up. What this effect allows me to do now is bend this box in a cartoony way. That's going to add a lot of life to this animation. So let's back this up to the start of our animation, and we're going to, along with that rotation, and actually look at that, our rotation is getting cropped off because of the Bend It. So what we're actually gonna do is bring our Bend It up just before the transform, and now that's going to be applied to the box before the rotation. So that stacking order of the effects does matter, but that's what we'll do to fix that issue. And what we're gonna do is, in conjunction with that rotation anticipation, is add some keyframes for the bend. So let's add a keyframe there. I'll press U to bring up that keyframe and then drag that back to the start of our animation. And at this point where it's rotated back, we're going to bend it back as well. So maybe -25. So now it's got that bendiness, and then we'll go forward to where it slaps down. We're just gonna mirror these rotation values. And here is another pro tip. I'm going to select and the bend property by holding down Control and clicking, and then just double tap the S key. So SS, and that solos my selected property. So I'm not worried about those other keyframes. I just want to compare the Bend It keyframes to the rotation keyframes. Okay, so right here where it slaps back down, we'll just put it back to 0. And then zoom out a little bit and go forward in time. Make sure that we can see that box and set another keyframe. Stay 0 between these two. And then on that follow through, we're going to bend it 25 degrees in the opposite direction. And then finally bring that back down to 0. So these keyframes are timed exactly the same as the rotation. And I'm going to just ease everything really quickly, and then add a little bit of easing on all of my curves just so it eases in and out a little bit more. I'm doing this completely arbitrarily. I'm not really, seeing any visual feedback of what I'm doing. I just know that stronger easing between these is gonna look a little bit better. So it's a starting point. Let's play that back, and there we go. So now we've got some bending happening. You might notice that it doesn't look all that great, and that's because everything is happening at the exact same time. Remember, overlap is about having motion overlap, not happening at the same time. So what I wanna do is grab all of these Bend It keyframes, and I'm just gonna shift them over in time. And I'll do that with the Alt or Option key on a Mac, and press the right arrow key 2 times to shift it forward in time 2 frames. Now if I play this back, it looks a little bit better. It's still a little off. I need to finesse my curves a little bit, but now that bend is overlapped on top of that rotation, so it's not happening all at once. So it rotates back and then it bends, and you can see that the box is actually starting to rotate forward a little bit before the bend is completely all the way bent back. So I think what I want to do to make this a little bit more interesting is take off the easing on this keyframe right here. Just drag that out so it kind of slaps down the same way that the rotation value does. Okay, and then maybe ease this out even more. All right, and then we'll do kind of a similar thing on this end. It can start bending a lot more quickly and get to that extreme value a lot quicker, and then kind of just slap back down on this end. Maybe I'll back that off a little bit and bring this down just a little bit. All right, we're getting there. Now I want to bring up all of my keyframes. So I'll just press U to collapse and U again to bring up the keyframes. And I think we can have this motion in the middle happen even quicker. So these keyframes here are the second half of my animation. So I'm just going to grab them and bring them back maybe 3 or 4 frames. So Option or Alt and the left arrow key 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and we'll play that back. Yeah, that's a lot zippier of an motion. I like that. So it speeds across, and that's going to allow us to have a snappier follow through and overlap at the end here. So I think that's happening just a little too slow and just a little too softly. So let's go into our rotation keyframes and really crank this one out, bring this one all the way up so it smacks down on the ground. And we're actually going to give a little bit more life to this with our bend, adding a couple more keyframes. So instead of just returning to its square shape very softly here, we're going to have it go in the opposite direction. We're going to bend it back, maybe a value of 15, and then go forward a couple frames and make this a value of, say, 5, and then go forward a couple more frames and set this down to 0. You can also call what I just did an overshoot, and that's something I teach in my Animating with Ease class, and it's basically just going beyond the resting value, which is also follow through. But then on the way back, it doesn't go to the resting value, it overshoots back in the opposite direction, and then again, slightly less in the opposite direction before finally coming to rest. So this overshoot animation that we've created is giving the follow through some decay and a little bit more wobbliness, a little more jiggliness, and it makes it a lot more playful. So I know that I need to modify these curves, so I'm going to select them, ease them, and then just modify their curves a little bit. I know coming out of this extreme value, I want it to kind of hug that keyframe, but then go into the next one and then jiggle back and forth pretty quickly. So I'm going to make these ones a little bit more extreme. So let's play that back. There we go, that looks really nice. So it's just a lot more jiggly, and it's basically showcasing that conservation of motion, right? With that tip up and slap back down. Because we're overlapping the top of the square, we're using that animation principle, it's giving a lot more life to the motion that we're creating.